In the coming years, the drilling industry will face an increasing need for people as well as a competition for that talent. At the 2014 IADC Critical Issues Middle East Conference, Director of Human Resources at Saudi Aramco, Mohammed Al Salami, provided some insight on how industry will face this challenge. Mohammed, thanks so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
So, Mohammed, what is the current and future status of petrotechnical professionals?
The current state of the oil and gas industry is facing a challenge of human resources in two areas. One is the aging workforce, and the other one is imbalance of skills or short of skills. So, in terms of PTP, which we call the petrotech, there are two types. One is basically the fresh grad who come to the industry, and the other one is mid-career. So, in terms of fresh grad, there is enough supply in terms of petroleum engineering and geosciences from colleges. However, there is a shortage of vacancies, which signifies that there is a lack of quality of grads to meet the requirement with the industry. An example, the industry requires about 10,000 fresh grads every year up to 2018. Currently, there is about 34 to 37 grads every year, petroleum engineering and geosciences. So if you look at the math, there is more supply than demand. But at the same time, there is a huge shortage within the businesses that companies are not filling these positions because of the quality of grad. So that's the first one. Now, in terms of mid-career, there is where the challenge is. There is a limited pool of mid-career because of certain factors. One is the aging workforce that been hired in the 80s are retiring. So the industry is in the perfect storm, let's say, in the crew change, they are leaving. So there is a limited pool. Roughly, if we talk about petroleum engineering, based on a study done by Mercer, there is about 300,000 petroleum engineers globally, based on a sample of 1.6 million workforce. Now, if you look at upstream, it comes out of study by Schellenberger. There is roughly about 140,000 really petroleum engineering in the industry. That's all what we have. So if you look at the demand from the business is huge. There are expansion, new plants are coming. So we are really competing for this. So that's really the challenge where the industry is in now. The future, prior to the drop in oil price, the prospect was high. There are plans to expand more by 2020 and 2022. And the industry really have to come together into a collaboration model. It's basically how we're going to be dealing with this issue to support the academia as well as to retain the talents within.
Well, other industries face similar shortage in personnel, but how is this challenge different for the oil and gas industry?
In two areas. One is that if you look at the oil and gas industry, the time to autonomy is basically from having a fresh grad to become an expert. It takes longer time than other industry. If you compare the oil and gas to the banking industry, it's a huge difference. An example, in oil and gas, it takes about 10 to 15 years really to have an expert level, to be competent and to be autonomous to do the job. Where in financing, in banking, in transportation, in other industry, it takes about 3 years. So the time of autonomy, the time to develop competency is longer than the time of the cycle down of the business. And that's really the challenge. So the industry cannot afford to lose talent when the economy is down, because it takes longer time to develop the talent than the economy is coming up. And that's what makes a difference between the oil and gas industry and other industries.
So what kind of suggestion do you have on how industry can approach this challenge and turn into more of an opportunity?
As we said, now we look at it in two areas. One is for fresh grads, the industry has to work with the academia. Also, the academia is going through a tough phase. Basically, they are facing the same challenge as we are. Their best professors are retiring. Exactly, those who've been hired in the 80s are retiring, just like our top professionals. So the academia needs the collaboration from the oil and gas company to come and help them to develop their professors, their curriculum, and their technology, as well as to provide them with prospect of a future, how the future look like in the oil and gas, so they can invest more into developing their R&D professors as well as the curriculum. That's for the fresh grads. Now, in mid-career, as we said, the industry has to retain the talent within the industry. And that's difficult to do, but it's very important. As we have a very limited pool of talent, we cannot afford to lose the talent to other industry. So there has to be a model by which the industry comes together in very collaborative model. We will respect the competitiveness and the nature of business, but there are ways of doing it, and we call on the industry to work either regionally or globally, is basically to come with different models and how we're going to be retaining these talents that we have within.
Mohammed, thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us on drillingcontractor.org.